friends. We are here in Acts chapter 12. Acts chapter 12 is one of the funniest chapters in the New Testament. I won't say it's the funniest, but right now I think it's the funniest. So basically what happens is, it says in the beginning that Herod, there's different Herods here, I should say. This is not the Herod that tried to kill Jesus. And I think it's not the Herod that actually was tried before Jesus either. There is Herod the Great, and then there's Herod Agrippa. I think this is Agrippa. Anyways, he had just killed James. And this is very important because James was one of the 12 apostles, but he was more than that. He was one of the 3. Like, every time that Jesus would do something special, like took him up to the Mount of Transfiguration, he would always take Peter, James, and John. So they were like his main men. And so James had just been killed by Herod, and it made him pretty famous. The Jews at the time, they weren't loving all these Christians, and so when Herod did that, it made Herod very popular. So he captures Peter, and he's thinking, oh, they're going to love me even more if I do this. So he's just about to execute Peter in the same way that he executed James. And the church is all praying for Peter. It says that they're praying earnestly. Now, I don't think that they had much hope for Peter being saved because James had just died. But they had reason to believe that he could be because Peter had escaped from prison before. So this is around the same time that Jesus was, it's during the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the Passover. And so it's about the same time. I don't know how many years later it was, but I think that there's something going on. I think that it's possible. It might have been part of the reason that God chose to do this miracle now, but it said that he was under a pretty serious guard. I think this is maybe even a little overkill. It said that he was chained to these guards, on his right and on his left, and everybody who was watching him, he was under seriously heavy security. And it said that he was sleeping, and an angel came to him. And I think this is so funny. It said the angel struck him. So the angel's just coming up to him, just slaps him. Wake up! Like, Peter, get up! And then the chains just fell off somehow. And the guards that were watching him just didn't see him. And the angel told him to put his cloak over. And Peter's watching this thinking, I'm having a vision. This isn't really happening. This is just in my head. Now, he's had visions before, of the sheet coming down, telling him to kill and eat. And he knows that experience. He's thinking, this is very similar to that experience. But then he kind of like comes to himself and he's looking around. And he's like, wait a minute. That just happened. So, that in itself is hilarious. But he goes to the house where everybody is earnestly praying for him. They're having a prayer session where they're praying for the church, and especially for, the leader of the church. And they're saying, I don't know exactly what they were praying. I hope that they were praying for this, but I don't know if they expected it. I know they don't, because it said that there was a servant girl named Rhoda that came to the door and saw Peter at the door. He's knocking on the door. It says the gate. So he's knocking on the gate. Rhoda sees him, and I'm sure he was like, Rhoda, open up the door. And she sees him, and then she runs back in the house and she tells everybody, Peter's at the door. And everybody's like, Rhoda, Peter's not at the door, okay? you saw his ghost because he was just about to be killed and he's probably dead. So that's probably what you're seeing, but Peter is not here. And Peter's still knocking at the door. There's just something so hilarious about this scene. So finally they go and open the door and they're like, oh, this actually worked. So, I feel like the Bible is pretty serious sometimes, and this is not, I'm sure this wasn't a laughing matter when it happened. I mean, maybe that part. I'm sure it was, but, Jesus was just, or Peter was just about to be killed. And, eventually he will be crucified. But God chose to save Peter here. He wasn't quite done with him. And it's interesting, when he comes in the house, it says it was the house of was it the mother of John Mark? John Mark is the person that writes the book of Mark. And he says, go and tell James. Now, he already knows that James, one of the three, has already died. The James that he's talking about is James, the brother of Jesus. So this James ends up becoming the head of the church. And so there's a book that he wrote in the New Testament. We'll get to it later on in the year, but so he's saying, go tell James that that I've been freed. So that is Acts chapter 12. It's one of my favorites, and I think it really shows us the power of prayer and how we should fervently and earnestly pray all the time. So, all right, have a great day. Bye.